Hi, this is Jay. Thanks for tuning in. Before you listen to this episode, we just wanted to give you a heads up that we had a few technical speed bumps, but we promise the podcast gets better. Just keep listening. Welcome to the Inspired Action Podcast. This is where we have motivational, inspiring conversations and interviews that we hope you will enjoy listening to. If you're interested in creating more balance in your life, understanding your 5-element energetic nature, finding the path of greatest ease,
or releasing the baggage of this lifetime and discovering ancient alchemy that can help you fly in your life, join us and other inspired actioneers on this alchemical transformational journey.
Hello, and welcome to the Inspired Action Podcast. My name is Jay McElroy, and I'm here today joined with
Lita Herman.
How are you doing today, Lita?
Great.
This is episode number one of the Inspired Action Podcast.
Woohoo! Woohoo!
I think everyone does that, right? Woohoo!
Yay!
Yes, so we're going to talk a lot today. Lita and I have been just having a really cool conversation, which we should have recorded, but we're going to do it again right now. And we were talking about if we were going to introduce these concepts to someone who has really no idea of what we do and how we do it. A lot of these concepts you're gonna know, maybe not in this format or in this context. Some may be new. It'll be a reminder deep down inside what you already know. Pretty much as a human being, it might resonate with you on many different levels. And today we're going to talk a little bit about transformational mind. We're going to talk about the Gen Ren. We're going to talk about Wu Wei. We're going to talk about self-cultivation. We're going to also talk about how to become a wizard in your own life, being an instrument of the divine. And then we're going to give you a little bit of homework that's going to include being the watcher in your life. So that's going to come later on in the show. Right now, Lita, why don't we talk a little bit about the desire of change and what does that mean?
We really wanted to use this episode to create a framework for how we're going to walk this journey together. This initially was going to be a master class. We were thinking that we would do a year-long class, and slowly but surely, Jay came up with the idea of doing a podcast, and it seemed a much better way to get this information out. So what we were thinking about is, if you're going to take this journey with us, which we're psyched you're here, that what are the requirements for someone who would be on this journey with us? And there's just one. And that's the desire for change and a transformational mindset, which just means you have a willingness to undergo transformation. We're all on a journey in life, and we're all moving who knows where. And some of us resist change. We don't want change. We get to a place in our lives where it's just, that's it. We don't want to move in any direction. And
until maybe something forces us
until
to change.
Maybe you have a crisis
or a big life-changing event.
And that may be the case for you right now. But in general, we're looking to have a more positive sense of change.
And I feel like it's about waking up in your life. It's about taking time to go, whoa, this is not cool. This is not what I thought I was going to be doing. And the desire to change is great. And then you take it to what's the next step? So before you can take that next step, you have to figure out what is it you want to change.
And if you listen to our first 000 podcast where we introduce our stories, we both came from really stuck places at a point in our lives, and we had a crisis, and we moved through it. And
we had pretty okay lives. So it's not like they were really bad lives. They were nice lives. They just didn't serve us. They weren't in alignment with us anymore.
We got stuck along the way.
And so, the way things happen is when you get stuck, you either stay stuck or you get unstuck. And this is a way to get unstuck in your life.
It's really a way to more positively get unstuck, not to wait for that crisis to happen.
And I always say, you hear all the time, ask yourself these questions. I always say the first question to ask is, are you happy? Which is a big question. And that's something you need to really think about. But I think that we can do better. I think we can ask ourselves better questions. If we can come up with better questions to ask ourselves, that's a much more interesting and exciting way to go through life.
For example, we do something called alchemy, which we're going to talk a lot about in this podcast. And the first question in the first stage of alchemy is, what do I really want? And you may never have asked that question completely open-endedly.
And being completely honest with yourself, not what your parents want or your partner want or what you think your children, your neighbors, or your boss or your coworkers want, but what do you truly want to do in your life?
And we found that a lot of people answer that question based on money. I want blah, 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 blah.
I want a better job. I want a promotion. I want to make more money. I want to make $100,000. I hear that a lot. But with that comes the chains, as in chains like shackles, of other things that you may not think. And then you start to think, well, I'm not making $100,000, so maybe I'm not happy with my job, or maybe I need to work harder, or maybe so-and-so's holding me back, or I didn't get that promotion. It's a whole, you start to go down that slippery slope of, is it really about money or is it about something else?
So we're going to challenge you to ask better questions. And remember, this is a journey and a process, and it could take months. It could even take years.
It could take lifetimes.
Lifetimes.
We're not in a hurry.
Definitely. So it's about achieving a certain level of consciousness. You may have already achieved a very high level of consciousness, in which case you'll travel with us from wherever you are starting. There's no hierarchy here. So, but everyone is moving upward and forward.
And I ask people, if they say, I'm kind of happy, and I say, do you want to be happier? Do you want to be happy? And they'll say yes, and I'll say, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for everything to crash and burn and be the phoenix rising from the ashes? Some people have to be that way, but if you're not, you can start the journey now, and you don't have to be miserable on the road to happiness. You can actually be happy while you're trying to get happier. That's a huge concept, and some people just go, wow. I beat myself up so much, and I think I'm such a piece of shit, or whatever the story they're telling themselves. And to think that you can actually be happy while you're being happier? Wow, I really like that.
I was thinking that if we had to give a goal to this podcast, the goal would be to master your own life.
It's really funny to hear you say that, because you never use the goals. But
I know
you're not a goal-oriented person like I am, but it's true. We need to set some kind of goal for the podcast.
And here's an example. Imagine you're in a little boat on the sea, and you don't have an oar even. You're just getting tossed here and there by the waves. So one minute, everything looks great. The waves bring you to this wonderful, magical part of your life. And then the next minute, here comes another wave, and you're blown into just shit and crap, and it sucks. And then the waves bring you back to a good place, and then a bad place. And life can just be that way. One minute is great. The next minute, the other shoe drops. And that's how a lot of people live their lives. They're very reactionary. They're just reacting to the good thing and then reacting to the bad thing.
Are you action in your life, or are you reacting all the time in your life?
What if instead of being tossed here and there, you get a rudder, you have an oar, maybe you even get a sail, and you can captain your own boat? And in Chinese theory, we say this is coursing the winds. Now, the wind is the metaphor for change. So we want change, but we want to course the wind. We want to have a direct path from point A to point B. Where are we going? And we want to be in control of that and in charge of that in an easy way, not a forced way.
Sure.
And so that would be an example of what we're trying to help you to evolve into.
And when we ask you later to be the watcher in your life, it's really about this. How are you energetically moving through the world? Are you reacting? Are you acting? Are you the little boat being tossed around? Are you on the calm seas, the rough seas? Where are you in your life?
There's another term that I love from the Chinese theories, and that's called a Zhenren. And that means that if you're a Zhenren, you're a realized human being, a sage, for example, someone who's a wise person. And that means that you've achieved some high-level concepts in your life. Again, there's no timeline. It could take years or lifetimes to get there. But that's one of the goals of the idea of mastering your own life.
Is that a Taoist concept?
It's a Taoist concept. And I like to say, this isn't the Taoist word, but it's like being a wizard in your own life, like creating your own magic. And I think of Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings, who says as he arrives in the Hobbit Shire, a wizard is never late, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to. And I think that's the kind of life we all want to live. We don't want to live a life where we're always surprised or in a reactive state of mind or even sleepwalking through through life all of the time. We want to have an idea of where we're going and an idea that we can, course that wind, set sail to a location. If this is what we're going for, you can think of yourself like you're a garden and you might be a wild piece of property, like, where nature's completely taken over. And that's a beautiful thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But you may want to cultivate a little bit. You may want to make sure the soil is very nutrient rich so the plants grow really well. You may want to even plant some special seeds.
You might have to do a little pruning. You might have be all in shade. You might have to prune back some branches to let some sunshine in, to get the fresh air flowing, the things that grow. And that's really the things that leaders really good at. And then me, I like to come in and pull the weeds and maybe, to really start to hoe the ground and turn things up and really get things moving in the right direction. So you can't just go in and rip everything out. You have to work on different parts, and it's a process. So the cultivating your own garden, it's like a process.
Because the reason we chose the name Inspired Action is that when you self-cultivate yourself, you begin to create the ability to be spontaneous in your life. And what that really means is that all of your actions are not based on what your logical mind tells you to do, the shoulds that, a society has us doing all the time. They're inspired actions. And there's another term in Chinese theory called Wu Wei,
which is one of my favorite topics. I will talk about that any day, anytime. It's really, we were going to call us like the Wu Wei podcast, but it's the theory behind a lot of inspired action. It's the action of non-action.
And there are a lot of great philosophers, Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi and all of these Chinese philosophers. But the Tao Te Ching, which most people know about, is a book about Wu Wei. So I think it's hard for some people to understand Wu Wei. It's often translated as non-action. What the heck is non-doing or non-action?
In a little bit, we're going to talk about my modern translation of it, which people know as in the zone. But go ahead.
But here's a metaphor. You're standing on a path. And, if we turn around and look behind us, we can see our footsteps, especially if it's dirt or something like that, or sand. But when we look forward, do we see the footsteps of where we're supposed to walk? And Wu Wei is that you can see the footstep in front of you where you should place your foot.
You don't force it. You don't, make it happen. It just happens.
It's almost like it just flows. The next footstep, the next footstep, the next footstep. It's there already. You just get a sense, oh, this is the footstep I need to take. This is the direction I need to go.
And, when you're in the Wu Wei or living the Wu Wei, it's an optimism. It's a happiness. It's not a stress. It's not like if I do this way, do I take that step? It's more than instinct. It's like a flow.
And Jay often says about it being in the zone.
In the zone. So from an athletic term or a creative term, in the modern era, people call it the flow. They call it the zone. They call it, it. Some people say runner's high is part of being in the zone.
Here's another example. There's a story in Chinese theory that there were good butchers, and a really good butcher, the best butcher, was a butcher who could take his knife and cut in the in-between spaces so that there would be no blood or meat touching the knife, and the butchered animal will just fall apart. It's like they're cutting the empty spaces. Or you could think of a surgeon who just magically removes a tumor without disturbing anything else around it. In acupuncture, we used to say that the best acupuncturist, the one who's doing Wu Wei, the needle slips in and the person doesn't feel it. And because it's going through the air between all the cells of the body. It's not even touching you, essentially. And so all of those things are high level mastery that can only be done when a person's in the zone.
In the Taoists, they have the spirituality component of that, which I think all of those, those people, they get in there and they get into the zone, or they get into this state, and they have practiced this way so much that they can just flow, and they know what the next step is without thinking it. It's like you said, the footsteps, they're right there. They just do it.
They don't even have to think about it.
They don't even have to think about it. So I looked up Wikipedia, and it says, in the zone, in a mental state of focused concentration on the performance of an activity in which one disassociates oneself from distracting or irrelevant aspects of one's environment. Okay, so for me, obviously, that doesn't feel like any spirituality, but I have been, as an athlete, and I'm a creative person, so I've been in the zone or in the state of Wu Wei many times, and I think that you do get distracted. You do kind of skip eating sometimes, or time goes by and you look and it's midnight and you're like, wow, where did those 5 hours go? Or it's this happiness, it's this bliss, it's this just kind of like in the zone, because that's, as an athlete, that's what we always used to say, get into the zone.
A lot of people don't think about being in the zone as a spiritual kind of thing. They just think it's some magical thing that happens when you're really good at what you do.
Right.
But I like to think of it as the phrase being an instrument of the divine. So that acupuncturist that's putting the needle in, the needle's not the instrument. The person holding the needle becomes the instrument. Something is moving that person as if that person is an instrument. And that's the same with sports. That person, that Olympic, athlete, or, top-notch golf player, especially I think golf, you have to really be in the zone.
Sure.
They are being moved. They're allowing themselves to be an instrument.
And I think the more that they think about what they're doing, then they kind of
come out of it.
That they come out of it.
Yeah.
So you have to think a creative person like a musician or a singer, if they let go and be one with what's going on, you see the magic. When they're trying to force it, when they're trying
when they're trying to try too hard.
Right. When anything when that comes in, that really negates it. And I have another thing here from Wikipedia. It says, in positive psychology, flow, also known as the zone. So in the flow, we hear that a lot. So this says, in the mental state of operation in which a person performing an activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment in the process of an activity. Again, not too spiritual, but if you take that in the concept of looking inward and really finding, I always think that you have to find a quiet space inside of you. You really can't be angry or distracted, or I guess it's finding the stillness, the quiet, and then doing this whatever task or whatever. It's not really a task, but just what you are.
And not to get too philosophical, but there are different philosophers that have different ideas about how Wu Wei is achieved. And one of them is that you do your 10,000 hours of mastery, and then you don't have to think about it anymore. So now you're in Wu Wei. And I think it's valid. I also think if you're doing it more from a spiritual point of view, what Jay was just saying, finding that still point inside yourself, then you don't need to do the 10,000 hours. You can achieve Wu Wei at any moment, doing any task.
Yes.
You don't have to be a master at that task.
And I think the Taoists, that's when we talk about the Taoists, I think that they imagine people living a Wu Wei kind of life.
Right. So here's a great example. I routinely find myself, now that I'm practicing Wu Wei in my life, I will be walking out the door in the morning and something will catch my eye. It doesn't matter. It's different every day. And one day it's an umbrella. The next day, maybe my snow boots or something else. And in the beginning, I would just look away and say, that's silly. It's not going to rain today. And then it would rain. And then later when it rained, I thought, I saw that umbrella out of the corner of my eye and it kind of like shined. It popped out at me and I didn't listen. So I think Wu Wei is being so aware that you see that that's a special thing coming to you that you need to be aware of, you take the umbrella, you take the snow boots, and then lo and behold, later in the day, it does, snow or rain or whatever it is.
Or you're just a hoarder and you have 50 pairs of snow boots and 10 umbrellas in your car.
I have that too. So
But I see
knowing
what
the
you mean.
difference,
That's great.
like I've slowly but surely, I have done the opposite. I have taken it and it's not rained, but that was when I was trying to force it. It wasn't an inspired action.
Sure. And I think that if we can find a way to use in the flow, energetically seems more compatible for me to understand it, because it does feel like life is flowing. Life is easy. There is no right or wrong. You just go where you need to go. And I think when we're talking about Wu Wei, you can really use it from a strategy standpoint of, what is your inspired action? And we're going to do a whole show on the how of why. So people always say, how do I get a better job? Or how do I do all these? How do I have a better relationship? How do I find that person? But if you go to the why and you look at that first, and then you understand the Wu Wei, and if you're working on yourself and you're self-cultivating and you're living this ease, the things that you want will come to you because it's right there already in front of you. So understanding the Wu Wei is definitely a component in the strategy of trying to do self-cultivation, trying to have that transformational mind that we talked about in the beginning. And how do you think that goes with alchemy, Lita?
So I was just going to say that I think Wu Wei is a very high level state of attainment.
Totally.
I mean, I don't live it all the time. And
I don't know if anyone, well, I guess someone could,
think
but
some
it's very
people do.
difficult.
Yeah. And the way that I think you can get there is to follow some of these philosophers' roadmaps. And alchemy is a particular roadmap that is Taoist based, that helps you move through stages, that basically gets you to living a level of spontaneity in your life that I call flying in your life. But what that really means is, imagine you wake up every morning, you don't even have a to-do list. You're not thinking, what do I do next? And in every next moment, you know what to do next. So at 10 a.m., you go, I have a dentist appointment at 10:30. And you get in the car and you go. He wasn't on a list.
You're making me think of Kramer and Seinfeld. He was Wu Wei. He didn't have a clock. He just boom. He woke up when he had to go. His whole day was Wu Wei. He was very sophisticated, living an enlightened life.
Hard to imagine, but yes.
Yes. So okay, no, go ahead. That just
so
popped
great.
into my mind. Love you, Kramer. Miss you.
So it's a long-term journey. You may already be there, and if you are, great. Come along board anyway, because we have a lot of other things to talk about. But it's also, we have to kind of start at the beginning. So if you're on this journey, the first step is self-acceptance, because you can't change or course the wind if you're not accepting where you are now. If you're in the little boat being tossed here and there, accept it. So the way we work towards self-acceptance is what we're going to be working on today, which is
homework time,
which is that you are going to become a watcher. That's it. The reason you need to become a watcher is because you can't accept yourself if you don't even understand what's going on.
You may not even recognize yourself. A lot of times I'll ask people, when was the last time you were happy? And some people, honestly, they cannot remember the last time they were happy. They've kind of lost track of their lives. They're kind of just going through the motions. And it's, it's not like they're like, woe is me, but they have just they don't remember what they wanted to do or how to do it. They just got caught in life. And that happens to a lot of people.
And Eckhart Tolle talks about becoming the watcher or the observer. And and if you haven't, go ahead and read or download an Audible version of The Power of Now, because it's a very important book.
Is an awesome book as well.
And his New Earth book. But start with The Power of Now, because that's where he really explains what the watcher is. And the watcher is just simply saying, okay, every time so-and-so says that thing, I feel angry. You may never have noticed you're angry before. You were just angry. You were observing
You
your
get
anger.
sucked into someone else's drama, someone else's negativity.
Yeah. You might notice every time this event happens, I do this other thing.
All right, so let's start. So the first thing we'd like you to do is to get a notebook or a piece of paper that you're going to have that's yours. It's, how you're just not going to share it with anyone. It's all yours, like a new notebook. Let's go get a new notebook. Okay, so what we're going to do for 1 week from right now, whenever you listen to this, is you're going to become the watcher, the observer in your life. So it's a little bit of writing every day for the next week. So what we want you to do is to find some quiet time throughout the day, whenever you want. You can do it in the morning, you can do it in the afternoon, you can do it at night, whenever you can find it. Just breathe, think about things, look around, recall the travels of your day. How does your day move along? How are you energetically moving through life? Like Lita just said, are you bumping into energetic roadblocks? Do you go smoothly? Are you having confrontations with the cashier or the barrister at the coffee shop? Or did you get yelled at in the parking lot or at work? Or look at your life and see and write some things down.
And are you acting or reacting to the people and the places and the things that are around you? So really it's about your emotional state during all these events. And
so in the beginning, let's do 5 things a day to see how you notice things, how you feel. You can look for patterns, but in the beginning, don't look for anything. Just write some things down.
Yeah, and you could say, I felt happy when this happened. I felt sad when this happened. I felt angry. I did this crazy thing. I don't know why I keep doing it.
Be honest and unbiased and unjudgmental. There's no right or wrong. We're just observing. And there's no one like, oh, I was the jerk who yelled at somebody or whatever. But if you are that person who's having that reaction, try to back up and see what happened.
After a week of this, you'll notice patterns.
Yes, we'll start to look at some patterns and we'll see what sticks out. Are you the little boat that's being tossed around, or do you have a rudder? Do you have a sail? Do you have anything, or are you just being tossed around?
And these patterns are going to be the starting place for your self-acceptance.
Yes, because you're right here. You're in this experience. You have to accept that.
So we're going to bring in some other concepts once we finish this homework. We're going to be talking about the 5 elements, because the energetic type that you are often influences how you have these reactions to the world. A wood person, for example, will be frustrated a lot of the time. A fire person, for example, will get hurt by things people say. An earth person might feel unsupported. A metal person might feel disrespected, and a water person might feel like they don't matter. And
we'll go into all this
and we're going to
details.
Over the next, podcasts, we're going to do a lot of different things in this area. So just now, what is the pattern? What are the patterns that you're noticing about yourself? And that's it. Because that's the next step to self-acceptance.
So we're just going to wrap this up right now. So this is a dialogue that we're having, and we'd love to have you become a part of it. You could maybe join our Facebook group. We're just starting that out, and we could talk about the podcast. We can open some dialogues, concepts. If you have any questions, we'd love to help you and answer them. Or you could just observe the Facebook group and be a part of it.
And I'd love, if you want to participate, for you to share the 5 things that you notice about yourself.
5 things a day.
5 things a day.
7 days.
Or maybe share the pattern that you noticed about yourself.
Yes. All right. So that's great, Lita. That's pretty much the show for today. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Inspired Action Podcast. You can follow our Inspired Actions on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
If you haven't yet, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. If you have already, thank you so much. We read all reviews and really appreciate your input. Join us next week for another Inspired Action conversation. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to hug the dog.